mostly from a new novel. It came out on Monday. They're on the little tiny card. The cards are free. Feel free to get the card. It has a coupon on the back if you want to actually buy the book. Any kind. And so this is Last Card at End Station. This is the dark urban fantasy, revenge and redemption, supernatural, paranormal romance, supernatural horror novel with mythological and fairy tale overtones and lesbian protagonists, featuring the ghost of the defunct Twin Cities streetcar system. Because I just wanted to find my little niche and crawl into it. And so, hey, I found a scene to read because it came out in audio, and we were listening to the professional reader, who I will not be nearly as smooth as, and we were like, hey, that scene, I haven't read that scene. That scene could work. So we're going to start with that scene today. The ringing of the bell startled her. May took a step backward at the sight of the big yellow streetcar. She had heard that there was a plan to bring back the old streetcars, heritage lines Metro Transit called the resurgent machines. They would intersect the modern and highly popular light rail train in downtown Minneapolis. She had not realized the streetcars were running, had not even noticed the tracks when she crossed the street. May looked around. The open doors of the yellow streetcar beckoned. She glanced at her fellow travelers. No one seemed to notice the old streetcar. May read the route sign on the side, Hennepin Avenue Express. She lived in Uptown. The streetcar would work as well as a bus. The fare is 10 cents, miss. She hesitated for a moment, starting to protest that she had a pass, but let her curiosity win out. May fumbled in her bag. Finding 5 tarnished pennies and a nickel, she dropped them into the fare box. The sturdy-looking man in an old-fashioned conductor's suit offered her a slip of paper. Your transfer, miss. You'll be needing that. She took the slip of paper and turned toward the interior of the streetcar. May froze. Then the car's bell rang twice before it lurched, making May lose her balance. As the car rolled forward with a sharp clack-clack, she gazed in bewilderment at the other occupants. It was as if Halloween had arrived early, and all the riders of the streetcar except her were on their way to a costume party. May grabbed the long overhead rail, more to steady herself from the shock than against the swaying of the streetcar. She locked eyes with a man in a business suit who had the head of a bison. He snorted and nodded solemnly to her. The small woman with fragile-looking wings and electric blue hair stood near her. Too short to reach the rail, she clung to the support pole. The woman smiled up at May and leaned toward her. These seats aren't exactly friendly to someone with wings. Hi, I'm Ella Fandy. You can call me Ellie if you want. May barely followed the high-pitched and rapid speech. I'm May, she mumbled, looking out the window. Hennepin Avenue passed by outside the window, but it was not exactly her Hennepin Avenue. The shops were dark and squat. There was none of the usual hustle and activity as they turned left at the Basilica of St. Mary and started toward Uptown. The Walker Arts Center and Sculpture Garden stood in grayscale and washed-out coldness. Don't worry, the wing woman said as they crossed Franklin Avenue and began to gather speed, clicking along. It'll all be there once you go back. Go back? May asked. She could hear the note of panic in her own voice. Ellie smiled. Of course! The smile faded. You got your transfer, right? May held up a slip of paper. And return fare? I'm pretty sure I've got enough loose change. Good, good. Old Man Lowry's cars. They'll get you where you need to go. Getting back, now that can be a bit of trouble. The car's bell rang twice and the machine jerked to a stop in front of the Uptown bar. May was surprised, since only a moment before they had crossed Franklin Avenue, now 10 blocks behind them. The bison-headed man stood and exited the car from the rear. May moved to follow the bison man, having missed her usual stop, the Uptown Transit Station, completely. The doors slammed shut. It would not budge for her, no matter how hard she pushed on them. This must not be your stop, the wing woman said. May turned the call out to the conductor and motorman that she wanted to exit. Her voice caught in her throat as 2 riders boarded at the front. The first seemed blessedly normal to May's eyes. He wore black slacks and shoes, with a white dress shirt and a black tie, loose at the collar. His black jacket was slung over his shoulder, and he carried a mundane, everyday briefcase. May watched him drop his coins in the fare box, and she held her breath, waiting for him to turn towards her, hoping to find a human and perhaps even friendly face. The face itself would have been at home on the cover of any number of fashionable magazines, or perhaps as part of one of those clothing campaigns featuring a professional male model, casual wear, while petting a happy-looking golden retriever gazing up at him adoringly. It was the eyes that ruined the effect. The eyes that turned to regard her looked like clear moonless night skies, all velvet black and shiny points of distant starlight. Ellie nudged May in the side with her elbow. Handsome bugger, isn't he? Of course, if he's interested in you, you're done for. Who is he? May asked, staring at the man with stars in his eyes. Well, he's, Death. She glanced at the man again. He was coming toward them, and for a moment May considered smashing the back door of the car open and running into the night, following the bicycle-headed man down Hennepin Avenue. She took a step backward, but then stopped in her tracks. A voice was singing Roy Orbison's Ooby Dooby, and May half expected to find the dead rocker climbing onto the streetcar to join the rest of the menagerie of creatures surrounding her. She was disappointed. It was not Roy Orbison singing. Maybe May realized she should be happy for that. She could not decide which would be worse, being faced with the spirit of the deceased or with the creature that sang in the dead man's voice. It walked on two legs, had two arms and hands, wore a red button-up shirt and black jeans. It had a battered old wide-brimmed hat perched on his head. That was where the resemblance to anything human stopped. It could not have stood more than 4 feet tall. Silver hair bunched into a loose ponytail and tied with a bit of dull green ribbon spilled from under the hat. The face was flat and smooth and deep gray. The nose was little more than 2 nostrils. The creature's eyes were amber in color and cat-like. Its nails shaped like an eagle's talons, reaching past its fingers. It smiled at her, showing a mouth full of pointed yellow and green teeth. It was all too much. May sat down on the nearest bench with a thump and turned to face the aisle. She scooted her back against the cool wall of the streetcar and raised her knees to her chin, clutching her bag between her body and her thighs. She started to tremble, swaying in her seat to the rhythm of the streetcar moving down the tracks. The winged woman gave her a sympathetic look and turned to the car's newest riders. "Stop it, you two. You're scaring her." "There is no need to fear, Maid Kathleen Malveaux," Death said. His voice was soft and soothing, not at all the deep, ominous sound May's mind had imagined it to be. The winged woman rolled her eyes, as if that's going to make her feel better. "What?" Death asked, looking down at her. "What have I done, Elephanty Firk, my flare?" Here's a page. Ellie put her hands on her hips. Her wings fluttered in agitation. "How do you usually greet mortals, especially the ones you have business with?" Death blushed, embarrassed. He turned to May. "I'm terribly sorry. You may rest easy, Maid Malveaux. My business is further down the line. I have not come for you tonight." The squat creature laughed. "Of course you haven't. I have. I've come seeking you, May. I'm here to guide you." Ellie placed herself between the new voice and May, thwarting the creature in the hat from his apparent desire to sit next to May. "And what exactly do you think you're doing?" But I've been working sendings to her all day in this voice. I need to..." May's head snapped up and she glared at well, she was not entirely sure what he was. "Wait a minute. Are you the reason I've been hearing Roy Orbison all day?" The creature smiled at her and doffed his hat, giving her a small bow. "Yes, I wanted to make sure you would recognize me when I came to you. I'm Kravis ap Themp, your ladyship. I am at your service. In fact, I am commanded to your service." May blinked. "Commanded? I am his mate. I've been sent by..." The streetcar jolted to a stop, causing May to pitch sideways and fall between the bench in front of her and the one that she had been sitting on. Howling, high and hollow, filled her ears. "Well, this is unexpected," she heard Death say. Ellie flapped her wings, rising toward the roof. May heard Kravis's voice, tight and frantic, speaking in a language she did not understand. "What's happening?" May asked, trying to stand. Around her, she heard screams and the sounds of the other passengers fleeing the car. A strong clawed hand grabbed her elbow and lifted her from the floor. She found herself looking into the eyes of the ugly gray-faced creature. The Kunanun had broken the magic of the streetcars. Things will move quickly now. May frowned. "Wait, the what?" Kravis grabbed her by the elbow and started to drag her toward the exit at the rear. "No time to explain. We have a connection to make." Death allowed them to squeeze past as he stood in the middle of the aisle. "Run, May Malveaux. The hounds are akin to me, and I wield some small power over them. I shall hold them here for a time." Clutching her bag, May followed Kravis and Ellie out the back door as several white-coated, red-eared hounds charged down the streetcar's narrow aisle toward the unflinching figure of Death. May and Kravis dashed around the streetcar while Ellie zipped ahead of them, flying quickly despite her fragile-looking wings. Around them, creatures and spirits scattered, running away from the streetcar in every direction. "Come on, woman, run faster," Kravis urged May. May ran as fast as her short legs allowed, her messenger bag flopping against her side, the strap pulling on her neck. She looked up at where Kravis was leading her. Lakeview Cemetery loomed, dark and brooding, its wrought iron gates closed, chained, and padlocked. Ellie turned in the air to face him. "Kravis, I'm not sure going in there is the best idea. The restless dead. It's the fast and straight path. Come on," he called to May, who was lagging behind. The house at her back gave her a fresh burst of panic-powered speed. The gate, May gasped. She knew there was no way she'd be able to jump it, not at her height, and she'd never be able to climb it before the hounds caught up to them. She need not have worried. Without slowing down, Kravis lowered his shoulder and, with a defiant yell, smashed into the wrought iron, shattering the lock and flinging the gate wide open. May leapt over Kravis as he tumbled and rolled down the path. Kravis, his shoulders smoking and torn but had struck the iron gate, sprang to his feet as the first of the hounds reached him. He grabbed the hound and slung it into the nearest piece of statuary. There was a hollow snapping, and Snow White hound lay still. "Run!" Kravis yelled at May and Ellie. "Get to the platform across from the lake. Ellie, you have to lead her." "This way," Ellie said, taking May by the hand. May stumbled on tree limbs and debris littering the ground. Small stones and markers that were barely above the earth and hidden by the snow threatened to trip her as she ran. Around her, the howls and barks of the pale hounds filled the night air. A wail of pain and despair rose high and terrible behind May, and was abruptly cut off. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She imagined she could feel the hot breath of the hounds behind her, their wicked yellow teeth inches from the back of her throat, ready to rip both flesh and life from her body. May looked over her shoulder, trying to find where her attacker would be coming from. Something on the ground, she could not be sure it was a white branch or a skeletal hand, snagged her leg, and she flipped. May curled into a ball and rolled down the steep hill toward the fence below. She thought she heard Ellie scream her name. May closed her eyes as she tumbled. She expected her life to end in any second, whether with the teeth of the ghost white hounds or the snapping of her own neck, and she did not want to see what finally killed her. May came up against the fence, bounced off the steel enclosure, and lay on her stomach, gasping. "Get up!" Ellie's frantic shrill voice broke in May's stunned brain. May rose to her feet, hands and knees. She looked toward the sounds of the howling and barking, but could not see the hounds. May, we have to go." "My bag," May said, her messenger bag lay a few feet away, its contents scattered on the ground. "We don't have time." May scrambled back to her bag, gathering up the files that she had taken from work, checking to make sure there were no pages laying on the ground. She picked up her keys and her pepper spray. "May, I've almost got it." A low growl sent a shiver down May's back. She looked up to find one of the hounds had reached her ahead of its pack and was staring at her, its teeth bared and hackles on end. The hound's ears lay back on its head, eyes wide as it prepared to spring at her. May aimed the can and pepper spray, pulled the pin, and fired directly to the hound's face. The creature howled and dropped to the ground, rolling in a frantic attempt to clear its eyes of the stinging chemicals. May stood and ran to the fence, leaving the hound behind. "We have to get to the next platform," Ellie said, nodding at the small raised wooden structure next to the set of rails. "Can you climb?" May nodded. She tossed her back to the other side and climbed over as the remaining hounds reached the fence. Her slacks hung on the top row of the barbed wire, and she fell flat on her back on the other side. Her pants gripped at the right calf. May grabbed her bag and half walked, half crawled to the platform and the waiting streetcar. "Miss?" she heard a voice say. May looked up at the big yellow streetcar. Harriet Como line read the sign. She looked around for her companion, but Ellie was nowhere to be found. She reached into her torn slacks and pulled out a piece of paper. "I have a transfer." So we'll get back to that when we're down the road. So I thought I'd go ahead and read a little bit from this. Should Be Drowned in Feather Sleep is a novella that came out last October, also from Carina Press, and I was very pleased with its performance, and Carina was very pleased with its performance, and almost all of my postcards for it have disappeared at CONvergence because apparently the fanboys like the naked girl with tattoos. Which, you know, I should have guessed that was going to happen. Grace dreamed of them, found them lurking in her sleeping mind as if they were part of her deepest primal self. They peered at her with red eyes, black heads cocked inquisitively, soft feathered bodies low in the water. She danced on the water with them, small, strong wings flapping while her body lifted up, her voice raised in a shrill call to match those around her. Other nights, she felt her broken body drifting, the sensation of sliding along on the glass-smooth surface of a living lake filling her dreams. She had awoken from the dream again tonight and pulled herself into the wheelchair, moving to the lone window of her small room. Sometimes she could hear one call out in the night, mournful and sad, its voice echoing across the sprawling waters of the dead lake. Grace sighed in the dark. The local elders, Reverend Coswell, Mayor Stuttgart, Sheriff Wilson, all the others would. Well, she wasn't sure what they would do. If they knew the loons, long fled or dead except for the last known pair living on Bay Lake, spoke to her at night, found new life in her dreams, she doubted they would actually harm her, even if they did not approve of her eccentric personality. It was the approaching spring festival that was making her restless and brought the loons to her dreams this night. In the morning, her family would load up their wagon and, with the rest of the community, make the annual pilgrimage to Bay Lake and to the loons. She wondered who among the young men and women would be chosen to receive the gift, or curse, the loons would bestow on them when their lonely cry rose across the lake. She smiled at the thought of the exasperation she would cause in the morning, having used the last of her blue hair coloring that night after her family had retired. It was such a little thing, but it gave her an illusion of control, allowed a tenuous connection to a better time in her life. Grace sighed and turned her wheelchair back to her narrow bed. She needed to rest before the wagon ride from the farm to the lake. David would be there, she thought. Seeing the young trader would be the highlight of her trip. Transferring from the chair into the bed, Grace drew the sheet and heavy quilt over her shoulders and turned to rest on her side, facing away from the door. When sleep claimed her, she did not dream, or at least did not remember dreaming. They glided across the calm water, moving slowly in the waning daylight. The female called out, soft and sad. Her mate dived, vanishing beneath the surface for several minutes before reappearing several feet ahead of her. He waited while she swam up to him. The female called again, waiting in vain for an answer. The male gave a soft, chirping warble and rubbed his head against hers. They were old, older than the waters they swam in, older than any of their species and most of their kind. They were not the first pair, but could easily remember when the first pair held sway, watching over all their children while the new world settled, took form, began. They would build the nest again, as they had every season since being entrusted with the essence. They would wait for the humans to come, study the one brought to them. If they found the spirit the first pair promised, they would fill the nest. If not, they would try to entice the humans to return next season. The male turned, looking at the dock. Each offering had held less magic, been weaker in their understanding of the mystery with the passing of each season. Humans had caused a suspension of natural order. They worried that their humans would never understand. They feared the chicks would never return, despite what the first pair had promised. In the dying glint of sunlight fading across the waters, the loons swam the surface of the lake they protected, keeping their lonely vigil over their charge. Then I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. She nestled against him, head on his chest, listening to his heart slow and return to normal. Yeah, I skipped the sex thing, sorry guys. Hidden as they were from the campground, away from the press of people and the eyes of family, Grace allowed herself to relax. The smell of sweat, sex, and campfire smoke filled her nose, smells that she associated with her rare times with David. She reached out and ran her fingers through the thin, dark hair on his chest. Come with us, he whispered. There's nothing here for you, Grace. These people, they're still my family. And somehow I doubt I'd make a good trader's wife. She frowned against his chest. It was an old argument. I can't even cook, you know. I need you, he said. His hand began to stray over her arm, over her shoulder, down her side. Do you love me? You make me feel alive, Grace. She pushed up, forcing him to release his embrace. She peered down at his open, earnest face, illuminated by the full moon shining into the tent through the open flap. I am not your magical pixie dream girl, David. I am not here to make you complete, to help you forget your own unhappiness or fill your lonely hours. Grace. She sat up, pushing with one arm while scooting her useless legs off his. Pulling one of the blankets they had used to make a small nest from the pile, she draped it over her bare skin. Grace looked down at David, his exposed body damp from their exertions and pale in the dim light. I'm fond of you, David. I'm fond of these times we have together. It's one of the high points of my life. She gave him a sly smile. And the sex is pretty damn good. We could have these times together for the rest of our lives, he said. Grace shook her head. No. It's a lovely dream, but it's not real. I would suck at the trader's life. I hardly have any way to pull my weight with my family. What would I do for yours? I sew, knit and mend to help my family and neighbors. I make little trinkets and necklaces to swap with other traders. I'm barely useful in a world I understand. He was silent for several minutes, taking in what she had said. She waited, holding her breath. She hoped he would not push her. What they had, it was enough for her. It had to be enough for her. She was smart enough to know that she would be a liability to the Tevitt family as they traveled. She refused to give up what small measure of independence she had, would not trade to become little more than David's sex partner. Grace knew what they shared was a bit of a fantasy in its own way, and that fantasy would never survive contact with realities of day-to-day life. She wasn't surprised when he sat up and started dressing. She sat in silence until he pulled on his jeans and shirt. "David, what are you doing?" He turned toward her, giving her a sad smile. Reaching out and touching her lightly on the arm with a rough hand, he locked his eyes on hers. "When you figure out what you really want, tell me. I want you to stop being silly and stay with me." "For tonight?" "Yes." He frowned. "But not forever." She swallowed, unhappy about the turn of the conversation. In the past, he had always been content to share her bed with no strings attached. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Because I want someone to share my life with. I want that every day, not just 3 or 4 times a year for a night. I want more." "Why would you want more with me?" She made it a challenge. "Being together for sex a handful of times a year hardly constitutes a relationship." "Is that all I am to you? Is that all we have?" She took a ragged breath, angry and confused. "What else can it be? I don't have anything else to offer you. I'm broken, David. This is all I have to offer, all I can give you and all I can expect in return." He sighed and picked up his shoes, stuffing his socks into them. He turned away from her next to the tent, stopping to look over his shoulder. "When you are ready to start living, Grace, come and find me." She watched as he hesitated for a moment before disappearing into the darkness, leaving her alone in the tent. The night breeze coming in through the open flap made her shiver. She gathered up the blanket they had loved on, found a clean corner and wiped away the tears running down her cheeks. The smell of their lovemaking hung thick in the fabric, and for a moment she clutched the blanket, twisting it in her grip. Shock and sadness gave way to anger and self-loathing. With a shrill shriek, she flung the heavy blanket out of the tent. They dreamed of her sometimes, knew the sadness in her, felt her slowly dying heart and soul. Earthbound, bound to an artificial means of travel, legs unable to support her on land anymore, the loons knew her soft skin, knew her attempts to change her plumage, knew her desire for a mate of her own and her fear of the long, empty days she saw ahead, even as she refused to allow any near her. Sometimes they flew over the dead waters to the north, circled, pulled to her flame. They called to her in the darkness, in her dreams, in their dreams. She knew them as well, but did not know. Tonight they sensed her nearby, so close they could find her if they dared the dry land. The loons considered taking to the air and making a sweep, but unless she came to the water, they would not be able to share their mystery with her. Tucking heads under wings, the loons dreamed of being a blue-haired girl, scared and alone among their flock. Let me look here and see how many people we've got. Because I've read this scene before. I'm going to do a quick count. It's about a coin toss with new people and people who have probably heard this scene before. So, and it's a fun scene. So I think we're going to read it. We're going back to last caller. May rode the car back to Uptown. She rested her head on the cool glass of the window and watched the shadowy world that she knew was her hometown pass by. As they closed on Uptown proper, more passengers came aboard. May paid no mind to the parade of fairy and spirit creatures, whether grotesque, beautiful, or mundane. She stared out the window as they reached Hennepin Avenue. Trendy young professionals, hipsters, punkers, and goths, and the ever-present teen crowd filled the area, dressed for each other in their best plumage. Liberally laced in the crowd was what could only be categorized as normals, wandering through Uptown on their way to a theater or a restaurant. This ordinary scene was shattered by the less than ordinary participants in the swirling chaos that was the corner of Lake and Hennepin. May wondered why she could see them now. Had her encounters with the streetcar changed her, pulled back whatever veil had hidden the fantastical world that seemed to exist alongside the one she had always known? It was not as if they were everywhere, which May supposed made them stand out even more. A woman with the lower body of a goat stood in front of the Rainbow Building. 2 man-like creatures, one short and decked out in a red cap, the other tall with hair so golden it shone, argued in front of Calhoun Square. May saw the bison-headed man, hunched in his heavy winter coat, waiting for the light to change so he could cross at the intersection. May closed her eyes. She did not want to see this world. She did not want to be a part of this extra reality, not if it meant confronting things like reanimated dead children. But she feared it was too late to return to her old life. May shivered as the streetcar turned up Hennepin. She climbed off the car in front of the old Walker Library building, the squat, solid structure that stood across the street from the newer underground complex. May stood on the sidewalk and let the crowds of pedestrians pass around her. She was surprised at how much activity there was for a Tuesday night. Of course, she did not get out much. This could be perfectly normal. She was not ready to face her empty apartment after the night's events. May wanted something warm to drink, and if not conversation and company, then at least the presence of her fellow humans. She drew her coat tighter around her body and, checking to make sure her bag was closed and secure, decided to walk to one of the local coffee shops. May, over here! May looked up to find Jill crossing the street toward her, bunched up in her wool coat, wearing a jaunty little knit hat, and looking entirely too put together. How are you? Jill asked, her breath filling the air with vapor, her cheeks and eyes bright in the night's chill. I was just going to get some coffee. Great, you want some company? May considered telling Jill she wanted to be alone, but changed her mind. Sure. May felt Jill slip her arm under her elbow, locking their arms together. Jill led her the rest of the way through the intersection. May pointed her finger toward Lake Street. Dunn Brothers is over there. Yeah, Dunn Brothers is perfectly nice, but Muddy Paws has cheesecake. Many, many types of cheesecake. That's quite the walk, May pointed out. Muddy Paws was a good 6 blocks away. It'll warm us up, Jay said, dragging May along toward her goal. May looked over her shoulder at the slowly receding Dunn Brothers sign. We could warm up in there. Come on, you. May gave in and followed Jill, heading north on Hennepin Avenue, past the library, the transit station, the goth apparel store and gear store, and a small dozen quirky independent shops and restaurants, all obstinate resistors against the large corporations swallowing the neighborhood. Do you ever go home? May asked as they stood waiting for a light to change, their target in sight at the other end of the block. Sure, I think Jill answered, starting across the street, May firmly in tow. I've changed clothes since we left work, which is more than I can say for some of us. Well, there's a story behind that, May mumbled as they walked into the coffee shop. The smell of roasted coffee beans and baked goods filled her nose. Her stomach actually rumbled, and May realized that she had not eaten any dinner, and whatever had been left of her lunch was slowly freezing on the street in front of the Arneson mansion. Jill smiled at her. Good, let's order. You can tell me all about it. May chewed on the inside of her bottom lip, considering what to order and what to tell Jill. She wished she had kept her big mouth shut. She watched Jill order a large caramel mocha and a slice of turtle cheesecake, and wondered exactly where her friend put all the food she ate. May ordered a medium cappuccino and a plain piece. I'll get us a table, Jill said. Give me your coat. May considered pleading she was still cold and keeping her coat on. She considered making a run for it when Jill's back was turned. Instead, she handed Jill her coat and suppressed a stab of panic. Jill returned with her when her order came up, and the two settled at a small wooden bistro table. May realized how terribly small it really was. There was barely enough room for all their food and drink. It was tucked into a dark corner of the shop, the kind designed for maximum enhancement of romantic whispers. May took a sip of her drink and watched Jill over the rim of her cup. She swallowed the hot, frothy liquid and, deciding the best defense was a good offense, opened the conversation. So what brings you up to Uptown on a Tuesday night, she said, looking Jill squarely in the eyes. Jill shrugged and dug into her caramel and walnut-covered cheesecake. I was feeling restless, so I thought I'd wander down and see if anything was going on. May nodded. Jill owned a townhouse in the Lynn Lake area, just east of Uptown. It was still a haven for artists and students and people who lived on the fringe, having suffered less of the gentrification that made the core corner of Uptown look like an outdoor shopping mall. So, spill. I'm sorry. Jill's eyes lit up. You said there was a story. May looked down at her half-eaten cheesecake. I think that may be more of a third date story, Jill replied. Because if that's the case, what say we go out for dinner tomorrow night and you tell me all about it? May frowned. I was going to say that's more of a 1 year into the relationship kind of story, and did you just ask me out? That must be some kind of story, and yes, I did. Jill scooped up another bite of cheesecake on her fork, pausing before popping it into her mouth. So? May rested her elbows on the table and laced her fingers together in front of her. She settled her chin on the top of her fingers and tried to keep her expression as neutral as possible. She had thought Jill was interested in her, but May also knew she was lousy at reading signals. I thought you liked hot boys down at the Fine Line. May swallowed her cheesecake and gave May a little smirk. I do. May sat up straight in her chair in an attempt to, as a friend from college had said, get the girls up where they can draw attention. May was not sure if it was the effect was having the desired effect, but it was the best she could do short of taking off her blouse. She could not stop a slight smile from forming on her lips. In case you haven't noticed, I'm not a boy. I mean, I realize I'm a little waif-like. I was going to say boyish, but that works. However, I'm not a boy. Jill rolled her eyes and took a drink of her coffee. Yes, May, I realize that. Did it ever occur to you that maybe I like hot girls as well? May's posture relaxed and she leaned back on the table. Oh, well then. Or maybe I like hot lawyers. I could introduce you to some if you'd like. Jill reached across the small table and placed the left hand on top of May's right one. Maybe I like hot girl lawyers named May. May smiled. Jill. Jill released May's hand and leaned back. This is the part where you tell me you're not interested in me as girlfriend material and I get to feel like a damn fool, right? Actually, this is the part where I tell you I'm terrible at relationships and that right now may not be the best of times for me to start something new. Jill's face broke into a wide grin. So you are interested. May looked straight into Jill's pale blue eyes. Jill, I'm not going to lie to you. There's a lot of weirdness going on in my life right now. There are things I'm not sure I can talk about, not without sounding like a complete loon. Jill crossed her arms. Try me. I'm into weird. May looked up as the barista approached the table. Ladies, I just wanted to let you know we'll be closing in about 10 minutes. Do you need anything else? No, thank you, Jill said. The barista smiled and walked away. May turned her attention back to her cheesecake, devouring it almost as quickly as Jill finished hers. As May took her last bite, the voice of Roy Orbison came over the radio playing behind the counter, where before it had been soft Celtic music. May turned in her chair and gave the radio a suspicious look. Walk you home? Jill asked, rising from her chair. She checked to make sure the lid on her cup was secure. May stayed with her and pulled on her coat. They both moved toward the doors, hot cups of coffee in hand. You don't have to. Maybe I want to. I have to catch a bus at Uptown Station, so it's on my way. Besides, you still haven't answered my question. Jill opened the door for May. The cold air grabbed both women in its brutal embrace. Shit, Jill shrieked as the stiff October winds rushed up to greet them. Dunn Brothers was closer to the bus station, too, May said. Hush you, aren't you freezing? May took a drink from her coffee. And this is nothing. I was thinking about breaking out the grill. You're weird. So are we on for tomorrow night? May gave her answer a moment's thought. She had enjoyed herself, and in truth, needed normalcy. Okay, where do you want to go? I was thinking that barbecue place in Calhoun Square. May gave Jill a faux horrified look. Barbecue? This early in the relationship? We've been out together bunches of times. I'm going to hold you to mid-relationship dating rules. Besides, wasn't it you who was just talking about grilling? The wind rose up and buffeted them, bending the lightweight maple trees along the avenue dangerously and knocking the lighter May into Jill. As May steadied herself on Jill's arms, she heard the faint strains of Roy Orbison's voice singing, I Drove All Night from a Passing Car. She followed the vehicle with her eyes and found herself looking at four figures trailing her and Jill about a half block behind. May shivered as she watched them. There was something wrong with the way they walked. Their gait seemed stiff and forced. As she watched, the wind blew back the hood of one of them. He had ears, those of a dog, on top of his head. The creature quickly grabbed his hood and pulled it back up, but not before May saw the long white snout. Jill, I see them. Let's make for the transit station. It'll still be full of people even this late. There might even be a transit cop. May knew a transit cop would not be able to handle what was following them, but she did not have a better plan. Okay, she said softly. The two women picked up their pace. May resisted the urge to look behind her, partially because she knew if she did, she might panic and break into a run. And something told her running would be disastrous. She noticed Jill reach inside her coat and withdraw a middle rod. May recognized it as a telescoping baton. She sincerely hoped they did not have to try to fight their way out of a confrontation, the more so because she had still not replaced her pepper spray. Cross, Jill said as they reached 28th Street, grabbing May's hand. The two women dived into the crosswalk. May chanced a glance over her shoulder. Their pursuers had picked up the pace, closing rapidly despite their awkward gaits. They raced along the sidewalk, unmindful of the other pedestrians' indignant protests as the four crashed along in pursuit of May and Jill. They're gaining, May cried. Station's right there. We'll jump at 21. It drops off near my place. They clambered onto the bus as the driver was about to close the door. Trying to catch their breath and ignoring the disgruntled looks they were receiving, they fished out bus passes and paid. May watched out the window. The four figures skidded to a halt at the transit station and watched the bus pull away, red eyes glowing from under their hoods. Both women were silent for several minutes, content to let the bus rattle along as they waited for the adrenaline rush to subside and their heart rates to return to normal. Well, Jill finally said, that was interesting. May turned to Jill. They were after me. And exactly how do you figure that? You remember that weirdness I was telling you about? They're part of it. Jill raised an eyebrow as she reached for the pull cord to request the bus to stop. I think we're going to need to skip the date and go straight to the story. The two women climbed off the bus, looking around cautiously at their surroundings. They made a quick dash down Halifax Avenue to Jill's townhouse. Jill unlocked the door, and both women slipped inside. Jill locked the door behind them, through the deadbolt, and slipped the security chain. Meg gave her surroundings a quick look. Jill's home was an ordinary 2-level townhome. A modestly sized living room, complete with fireplace, greeted her on entry. A smaller dining area set off to one side, and Meg could see the barest glimpse of a kitchen shielded by a long wall across from the fireplace. The staircase in front of the door led up to the bedrooms. Jill's taste in decorations and furniture meant her comfortable, with oak wood dominating the furnishings. The cushions on the chairs and couches were contrasting red. The entertainment center was modest, and the artwork on the walls impressionist, mostly tasteful renditions of the female form. Look, Jill, maybe you should give me a ride home. I'm not sure how much you really want to know, or even how much you believe about what's going on. Maybe I should leave. Or maybe, Jill said, taking off her coat and favoring me with a smile, you can have a seat, and I'll make us something hot to drink, and you can fill me in on why a pack of 2-legged Tindallos hounds are chasing you. May blinked in surprise. Actually, I think they might have been 2-legged Cunanun. Jill cocked her head. Cunanun? It's Welsh. I don't know much about Welsh myth. I'm more of a Lovecraft kind of girl. May stood in the doorway and gave Jill a curious look. You're taking all this rather well. Jill snorted. For your information, I think I might have peed on myself back there. And I've spilled caramel mocha all over my shoes. May chewed on her lower lip for a moment and sighed. I shouldn't get you involved. I think it's too late for that. Besides, I don't think either one of us wants to go back out there tonight. May hugged herself. Jill was right. May was scared of what might be waiting for her in the cold Minnesota night. She was afraid to spend the night alone in her little walk-up apartment. Coming to a decision, May took off her coat and kicked off her shoes. Okay then, if it's all right, I'll crash on your couch tonight. Jill smiled. I'm grateful that's settled. I'll make us some tea and you can tell me all about it. 5 minutes later, the two women were settled next to each other on the couch, steaming cups in front of them on the low coffee table. May decided to start at the beginning. She put her cup down and reached into her messenger bag, withdrawing the illicitly copied file of Cassandra Arneson. She opened it on the table and turned to Jill. I saw a living dead girl tonight. So the other part of this novel, besides me and Jill, is there's also sort of a hard novella, a novelette embedded in it, which is written by another character. And the two stories interweave with each other. And she's writing basically on a wall, so she has little journal entries. Dear Wall, Elise did not notice the writing, even when I stood underneath it to make her look. If Elise can't see it, then I'm not worried about Cassandra or Mother. Mr. Hodgins is another matter. I tried to get another message out at lunch. Someone had placed an arrangement of flowers on the center of the table. I hoped they could be my herald, but Mr. Hodgins saw what I was trying to do and threw them into the fireplace. I hate Mr. Hodgins. I hate him for making me wear Cassandra's face. I hate him for making me speak in her voice. I hate him for turning me into her twin. And I hate that I am not strong enough to break his magic. Someday I will learn his true name and I will catch him with his iron off his finger. Someday. The silverware is real silver. I'm starting to make a connection with it. I could hear a humming sound coming from it, but I couldn't tell if it was because of me or them. I'm sorry I didn't write earlier, but Cassandra stayed in my room all morning. We played and I read to her. Cassandra is funny at times, and much better than being alone all day. She's kind of slow-witted and smells, but it was nice having her here. They worked on me again. I don't know why they made me eat dinner if they know I'm going to throw up after their little chant sessions. I got most of my vomit on the red-haired woman, right on her shoes. You thought I'd stomped on her toes the way she screamed in panic? I'll have to remember that. Afterwards, Mr. Hodgins called Elise to take me back to my rooms. I wish I had a window. I haven't seen the sun or grass or trees in weeks, and I'm starting to get sick from being cut off from the world. They know better than to let me outside. Elise and Mr. Hodgins are ever watchful. I hear them outside the door talking about tomorrow. Elise is supposed to make me presentable at dinner. I'd kill Elise and run for it, except for the iron ring she wears. I can't get near her if she doesn't want me to. They all wear the rings. Rings charged with magic against me. My mother's blood is too strong in my veins for me to resist that. Cassandra seems better today, more like a real girl. She seems almost aware, and the smell's not as strong. They must have freshened her up a bit. I wonder why they used so much magic on her. I wonder how she died.
Ew.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly what I read.
Friendly.
It's very friendly.
So we got like 20 minutes. I'm going to read something new because I want to read something. So this is a little excerpt from a novel that I haven't sold yet that I have out on the market called Dark Water Blues. This started out as my They Fight Crime novel. There was a meme going on Facebook or LJ or wherever it was a few years ago. And so this was my, you'd have a, he's a blah, 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 she's a blah, 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 they fight crime. This is how it started anyway, and then of course it became something else. So basically these two people, this mage, Richard, and the young half-fairy woman, Holly, who is a taboo creature, is going to be destroyed, and she has got Richard to protect her as best as Richard can, because Richard hasn't really been using his magic much for the last several years. And he's good with it, but he's angry and he's tired, and he's a little burned out, but he's decided to help her because it's a good way to thumb his nose at authority, because he's just that kind of guy. So they're on the run. In retrospect, I should have realized that escaping the grasp of the Twin Cities Mages Council would not be done easily. I should have known that I would not be able to simply drive away from the cities. The first indication of trouble came when we passed the exit to Interstate 694 north of the cities for the second time. By the third time we passed it, I was starting to sweat, looking for an ambush or an attack. I swore and turned the skimmer around, shooting back down 169 headed south, but found that way blocked when we reached Interstate 494. I considered turning east or west, but figured those roads would be closed to me as well. It was almost an obscene use of power on the part of the council. Something that big was likely to take several senior mages drawing from the power of the node and working together to produce. Around us, the storm intensified, and I took grim satisfaction that all the attention we were drawing as they closed mine and Holly's escape routes were leaving them unable to deal with the road weather system I had called up. Now what, Holly asked as I pulled off the road. We go to ground. If they can block us, can't they find us easily as well? She was right. The council had us dialed in and locked on. This is a near future urban fantasy, by the way, sorry. Once we stopped trying to run, they would be able to deal with the storm and then come after us next, wherever we were. I needed time to work out how they were tracking us, and even then there was no guarantee the knowledge would allow me to stop them. We needed someplace they could not reach, which left me with limited options and none of them good. Holly wasn't going to let the plan forming in my head. I turned the skimmer toward the heart of downtown Minneapolis. What are you doing, Holly asked. There was a slight note of panic in her voice. Something desperate and possibly stupid? Is that going to be a problem? She bit her top lip and frowned. I hope you're not planning some kind of suicidal attack. No, though they might think that was my plan if they do have us made. Do you trust me, Holly Ellison? She glanced at me out of the corner of her eye. Yes. Then trust me now, Miss Ellison. No matter where I take you, trust that I have a plan. Is it a good plan? I wouldn't go that far now. In that case, is it a crazy plan that has almost no chance of success but is the only hope we have to survive the night? I gave her a sharp glance and turned the skimmer down the downtown exits. What kind of nonsense is that? Have you been reading fantasy novels and comic books? She laughed. Don't you watch many adventure movies? No. What do you do for fun? I narrowed my eyes as the traffic slowed and started to back up. It might be typical gridlock, but I did not want to count on anything being typical, normal, and not specifically designed to stop us. I dived down an exit street level and hoped for the best. I used to drink coffee and stare at the wall a lot back before I met you. How tedious. Well, when your love is dead and your nights filled with nothing but nightmares of your past crimes, there's not much else to do. She was silent as downtown loomed in the windshield, gray, wet, and grim. I turned the skimmer away from the wreckage of the old Walker Arts Center and shot down the service road, past the chopped up remains of the former sculpture garden. That was where we hit our next obstacle. They had the street blocked with 2 Metro Transit hover buses. The group of ragged-looking men and women in front of the buses were armed with a variety of makeshift weapons, ranging from rusty chains to aluminum baseball bats. I knew certain neighborhoods outside of the core Minneapolis downtown were run by loose associations of folks who had banded together and hired small private mercenary groups for protection against the local gangs and wannabe crime lords. But the highways in the core of downtown Minneapolis, where several wealthy people lived in secure high-rises, were still relatively safe and heavily guarded. The fact that the core of the city was being blocked meant these folks were probably not here to shake down commuters for a toll. That they were willing to stand out in the pouring rain told me that this group of thugs had been paid handsomely to provide a service. I watched as they waved other skimmers and cars around the buses, not even paying much attention to the occupants, and it didn't take a lot of thought to know what that service entailed. A handful of Minneapolis police cruisers, bright, shiny silver and bristling with weapons, sat parked further down the street, probably there to pounce if the hired muscle overstepped their mandate. I suspected they were also the backup plan. They were to bottle us up and arrest us if we managed to slip past the hired help. It was the kind of power and influence the council had. A simple call to City Hall was probably all it took. A man in a greasy vinyl tote pointed at us, and I knew I would not be pulling over to chat with them. I stopped the skimmer in the middle of the street, much to the annoyance of the operators behind me. Holly fidgeted nervously. "Richard, I want you to keep your head down out of sight. What they can't see, they can't shoot or knock off with a bat." She looked like she was trying to decide if I was serious, so I reached over and pushed her head down. She growled but stayed there. I looked back at Samson. Samson sounds familiar. He had his claws firmly dug into the back seat. "You know where to go?" I was asking my familiar, but it was Holly who replied, "No, the Basilica." She started to rise up, a protest on her lips. I pushed her back down, none too gently this time. Behind us, several of the other vehicle operators were leaning out their windows, yelling at us and laying on their horns, growing angrier by the second. "Stay down. The last thing we need is some sharpshooter picking you off before I can get you to safety." "But the mage priests, they were the ones who were helping my father." "I know. Now listen, if I'm caught or incapacitated, get inside and find a priest. Ask for sanctuary and asylum. They have to give it to you, even if the police are chasing. Though I doubt, I lost track of my line, this is probably being blind. Though I doubt the cops will follow you inside. I really didn't want the church involved, but they were our best bet for a safe place to hole up. Richard, I'm not sure this is a great idea. I looked back at the blockade. The hired muscle had all moved to block the path around the buses, holding their weapons at the ready. It was hard to tell through the driving rain, but it looked like they might be laughing. In an old movie, especially in an old movie of questionable quality, this would be the point where I would race the engine, maybe even make a couple of false starts in an attempt to show my opponents how tough I was and that I'm in business. I didn't see the need for that, considering that I was nearly 2 tons of metal and ceramics. I hit the throttle and released the brake, letting the skimmer surge forward, accelerating the whole way. A couple of the thugs were either too slow of wit or foot, which was a tough break for them, but the impact and flying bodies did get the attention of the police cruisers watching the scene. They hit their lights and sirens as I turned the wheel hard and slung the skimmer around the buses. The police cruisers moved to intercept us, training weapons on us. I could see my goal in front of me, though, and I hoped the police would be expecting me to make a run for downtown. It might throw them off for the handful of seconds I needed. I gave the old Ford all the throttle it had. It tipped precariously as I wrenched the wheel the opposite direction I had been going. I heard the mechanical voices of the cruiser ordering us to stop and surrender, but that was a command I was going to ignore. The high-helmet electric pulse cannon firing filled the cabin of the Ford, and for a few seconds the electronics flickered. A glancing blow would not be enough to stop an older model like this, but with a squad full of cruisers zeroing in on us, it was only a matter of time before one of them got a direct hit, and the Ford was disabled. I rolled down the windows in anticipation of needing to jump. I swerved around a police cruiser and turned hard left. The skimmer shuddered and there was a clunk. The power died and I lost control as the front driver's side dug into the grass in front of the Basilica of St. Mary, and the whole machine slid sideways, barely missing the statue of Father Hennepin. Holly was climbing out of the window almost before the skimmer came to rest. Samson bailed out behind Holly, and both of them made a mad dash toward the steps and doors of the Basilica. I followed as quickly as I could, but I was not as nimble as a young woman, and my feet hit the ground as the cops started firing. The police officers, decked out in battle armor, tried to track on Holly with their weapons, but she was moving fast, as only a partial fey creature could, and suddenly vanished from sight, using her own magic. The dozen or so officers turned their weapons on me, and I crouched down, keeping the skimmer between me and them. The council had still not dealt with my storm. It was a moment's work to call the lightning down, even as bullets started slamming into the body of the skimmer and shattering its glass. The roar and flash were instantaneous, and I ran for the steps. Behind me, the first officers recovered and shouted at me to stop, but they were unwilling to fire at me and risk shooting into the church, the doors of which now stood open wide. 2 figures in black priest robes with white collars stood just inside the threshold. I stumbled into the Basilica of St. Mary and fell to my knees, panting. A gentle hand on my shoulder made me look up, and I found Holly's worried black eyes regarding me. I saw blood running down her arm and realized that she'd been hit. I turned to the priests who were still standing at the door. Beyond them, several of the officers were charging across the soggy lawn. I plead for sanctuary for myself and the mixed blood woman, in accordance with the 9th decree of the 4th Ecumenical Council of the Vatican, that we may safely and justly address accusations against us. Yes, we call it being visually impaired readers. You really lose track of your life. Your host. It takes very much to it.